Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first lexbizz Global Tech Roundtable. It's a great pleasure to give you a very warm welcome. My name is Ilka Groenewold and I am your host for today. Before we start, I would like to give you a short overview about our event. We welcome international tech experts from leading ERP and cloud companies from the US, Australia, Germany, and France. In our roundtable, the first 50 minutes, we will listen to an exciting discussion from our experts about global tech trends for SMBs. So SMB stands for small and medium business. Afterwards, there will be a 20-minute Q&A session where you will have the opportunity to ask your questions. Please use the chat and we will read out your questions out loud. We will conduct the discussion in English, but for those who would like to attend the discussion in Germany, we have set up the possibility of simultaneous translation. You can use this service via the provided links to Interprefy here in the chats. By the way, the event will be recorded. First, I want to introduce our speakers for today. They are all part of an international network of business partners from Acumatica. The so-called Acumatica OEM network consists of large software companies who locate the Acumatica Cloud ERP platform for their industries, markets, strong resellers, and independent software vendors. They all contribute to an international expansion course of Acumatica, the fastest growing ERP platform globally. These international partners share their local insights, learn from each other, and set new trends in their SMB markets. Let's introduce our guests. So let's start. Christine Bouisson. Christine Bouisson is Director Product Management at Cegid in France and responsible for Cegid XRP Flex, which is based on the cloud's ERP Acumatica. With her many years of expertise in the ERP market, she is very familiar with the digitization development in the French SMB market and has relevant insights into the transformation of business applications from desktop to cloud. Welcome, Christine. And welcome, Frank Feustel. As head of product at MYOB, Frank Feustel is responsible for the existing ERP, CRM, and human capital management product range of the market leader in business software for SMBs in Australia and New Zealand. He's also responsible for strategy and delivery for all new products. For years, the MYOB customer base has been shifting from desktop solutions to the cloud. With his many years of experience, Frank Feustel knows the technological and business drivers and brings insights from the Australian and New Zealand small business market into this discussion today. Welcome, Frank Feustel. We would like to welcome Robert Gibbons. Robert Gibbons is Chief Product Owner of lexbizz, Lexware's cloud ERP platform. Since 2018, he is responsible for the strategic product direction and localization of the Acumatica ERP platform for the German market. Originally American, Robert has lived in Germany for the last 7 years. Welcome, Robert. Nice to meet you. And we would like to welcome Ajoy. Ajoy Krishnamurthy is responsible for the technological advancement of the US-based cloud ERP platform Acumatica. Under his leadership, the ERP solution has become the fastest growing XRP platform globally within a few years. According to Gartner, Acumatica is among the spearhead of innovative ERP systems and has received several awards for its innovative technology. Ajoy understands the business needs of small and medium-sized enterprises across a wide range of industries and combines them with the potentials of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, and the Internet of Things. Welcome, Ajoy. And welcome, Frank Mintz. The global perspective is provided by the internationally active cloud and innovation driver Microsoft, represented by SMB sales lead Frank Mintz, who heads the Azure business for the SMB segment of Microsoft Germany. As lead digital transformation advisor SMB, Frank knows the degree of digitization of German SMBs, brings insights into the relevance of the cloud for new business technologies to the discussion, and can provide comparative assessments of cloud-driven technologies in an international context. Thank you for being here today, Frank. The US is several years ahead of Germany in terms of digitization and new technologies. You all know that. Today, we want to compare the level of digital maturity between the US, Australia, Germany, and France. We know the higher the level of digital maturity of the company, the greater the opportunity to quickly and easily integrate new tech trends and applications to work more efficiently, innovate business models, and offer value-added services to customers. Especially cloud-based IT infrastructure can play a particularly important role for SMB when it comes to technological openness and rapid innovation cycles. Ajoy, you are the Chief Strategy Officer of Acumatica, the fastest growing cloud ERP globally from the US. From your own experience, how cloud savvy are US SMBs? What are digitization drivers?
Thank you, Ilka, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with the fellow panelists here, talking to you all about the digital transformation and where the market is from a cloud adoption standpoint. As an industry, we've been talking about digital transformation for quite a long time, and this is the process of taking customers and organizations. You talked about the small and medium businesses, Silka, in your introduction. How do we get them to go from a very disconnected, broken processes into more of a integrated, automated systems? Right, that transformation is not just one, flip of a switch, you go from point A to point B, but it's a journey. And there are several dimensions for organizations to pay attention to as they embark on this journey. If you look at, I've seen data that says about 75% of the small and medium businesses haven't gone through this digital transformation yet. And it actually varies quite a bit from workload to workload. Whether you're talking about a CRM system or HR or something like an ERP, and obviously where they are in terms of adopting cloud platform or the cloud ERP system, obviously depends on that quite a bit. There are several drivers that are getting organizations to move in this direction. I mean, we all know cloud, at least where I'm sitting here right now in the US, it's mainstream, right? There's not a question on why cloud. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When do these organizations going to move over into this new cloud world, if you will? And the driver is coming from many different angles. It's obviously it's about leading with the customer value. Can I service our customers more efficiently and effectively? And modern technology and the cloud platform, customers that we interact with in small and medium businesses, they don't see this as a necessary evil. This has become a true differentiator for them from the business standpoint. And then a couple of other drivers are coming in and pushing this obviously discussion forward. One is the new workforce coming into the world, and this new workforce is demanding a very unified experience. This is the workforce that's used to social media, Instagram and TikTok and Spotify and so on. And these are the ones that are taking pictures of their checks on the phone and it gets deposited into the bank. And then they show up to work, they see a stack of paper piled on the desk and somebody have to manually key it in. What a contrast. If anything, you would think enterprises and businesses would be invested in making these folks' life better. So that's a key thing. And then obviously the pandemic has accelerated that adoption as well. I think people have realized being in the cloud is so much critical when you expect so many changes that are happening in such a rapid pace that you need to have that connected system so you can service both your employees, but more importantly, your customers better.
Thank you, Ajoy. Robert, you are a US American and know the US market very well. Today, you are Chief Product Owner of lexbizz and responsible for localizing and developing the cloud ERP platform Acumatica for the German SMB market. You combine both worlds, the US and Germany. How do you perceive the digital maturity and especially the cloud readiness of German SMBs? What are key drivers for the cloud?
Thank you, Ilke. It's a good question. And I think to answer it simply, I do believe that Germany, from a digital maturity standpoint, is about 5 to 10 years behind the United States. And listening to Ajoy talk about differentiators and things like this, it makes me think of the saying, the country you learn the most about when you travel abroad is your own. And in my role, it's my responsibility to really start to dig into the mindset and what drivers and what types of things move the German SMB market to adopt these digital technologies. And what you see from a mindset perspective is, from an American perspective, thinking about differentiation, thinking about opportunities, as compared to the German mindset in terms of digital transformation, which is more of how do we look at the ROI? What is our payback period on these types of things? And so, based on this mindset, you do see this lag in the digital maturity. I think one of the best ways to demonstrate that, especially in the SMB market, is in the business application realm. In the American or some of the other markets, you see 5 or 6 or 7 big players, typically around technologies and cloud technologies, starting to consolidate the market. Whereas in Germany, you still have something like 400 business application softwares, and the vast majority of those are on-premise. So it's not necessarily that they're only thriving, these on-premise products, but they're also planning years of growth ahead, which is something in the American market you wouldn't necessarily see. I think there are a number of reasons for that. One is first, from a macroeconomic perspective, things are going well, right? Despite Corona, the German economy was well positioned and came through that well, and a lot of our customers we've seen have done well through that. So it doesn't necessarily drive change. Another thing is, because the mindset from a CEO perspective or a purchaser perspective isn't, hey, what is the opportunity for my business? It's more of, hey, let me look at some ROI or see some more operational things. You see more of a fragmented approach. So it's not, let's find an opportunity for our entire business, but let's look at operation by operation, which leads to a fragmented approach. So 2 or 3 or 4 products, as well as a heavy reliance on Excel to pass information back and forth, which slows down that journey. And then finally, I think unique to Germany, which I've seen as compared to the United States, is the reliance on external stakeholders in this process, which slows down the willingness to change. When you look at the drivers behind this shift, because you do start to see this shift in the German market, one is seeing the potential and this fear of missing out as a business leader in Germany, and looking at models like America and looking at models in other markets. They start to see, how can we go about this? And the ROI over time becomes more clear as these success cases start to build out. And I think another thing, and a key driver here, is talking more about operational efficiency, right? So looking at how can we save infrastructure costs? How can we reduce the costs of bringing data back and forth in decision making? And I think that these 2 drivers are starting to push this. There's still ground to be caught up, but I think that they're starting this journey, as Joy said, it is a journey, and they're starting to take on in that direction.
All right, thank you so much, Robert. So may I ask you a question? Frank Mens, we briefly looked at Germany and the USA and gained initial insights into digital maturity and cloud adoption. Cloud readiness in Germany is increasing. In the USA, cloud is mainstream. As an international cloud computing provider, Microsoft knows many markets very well. You are the sales lead for SMB at Microsoft Azure. Describe from a comparative perspective what differences you perceive between Anglo-Saxony, like USA, Australia, on the one hand, and Europe, for example, Germany and France, on the other.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. So I want to point out, Germany is always different. I worked in many different areas of the digital world, mostly at Microsoft, but it was consumer. If it was commercial and SMB business, Germany was always business. Also, Japan is always business, different. And there are some circumstances which are very typical to Germans. And I think the most important thing is that here, and it's a combination of different things. For decision makers, IT so far has not have been the strategic priority as in other markets. Yeah, in US, it's IT is key because they live IT. We say, okay, here IT is an add-on. Usually the decision maker focus on his own product or service, on his customer, and what's to serve him, what is good. Yeah, but strategically, IT was in the IT department. If there's no IT department, then it's the IT partner. And it was not part of the strategic development of the company. Then often is a little bit skeptical about cloud computing. What's the value of cloud computing? I think I explain it now for 10 years, maybe longer. And sometimes I get bored, but it's important to understand that we have to explain it again and again. And I think it will come what Ajoy says in terms of the customer. He is used when he starts working in a company with cloud services, easy to deploy, easy to adopt. But also when we look in SMB, they're looking for developers. And when we look today at developers, when we look at the university, there is Google, there's AWS, there is Azure in the curriculum already included. And if you want a developer working for your company, and each traditional business will be more and more also depend on IT and cloud, then you will not find them because they don't want to wait before they can start programming if someone in IT have deployed or bought a server and the infrastructure for them. So it's a combination of this. IT is strategic. IT will be even more strategic. And then I think Robert mentioned is Germany is economically very healthy in the past 10 years, different to other European markets. The business books were booked out. There was no problem getting new business. And that doesn't help, let's say, Germany to transform, to look where I can save money, where can I invest smarter, where can I have more operational effectiveness, because it was there. There have been no economical problem. And in other markets, we see this, especially in Southern Europe, unfortunately, we see this. We have to say they have adopting cloud services much more earlier.
All right, thank you, Frank. So let's jump overseas again to the Asia Pacific region. Frank Feustel, you are head of product at MYOB, a market-leading software provider in the SMB market segment. Australia is also considered a very dynamic market. How digitally savvy are Australian SMBs? And what are cloud drivers?
Yeah, thanks, Ilka. So I think Australia is somewhere in between Germany and Australia. So if you look at the speed of how the digitalization is driven forward, and that's supported and in general driven by the nature of the Australian people. So the Australian people are generally very open to new things and are innovative in their spirit. If you think, for instance, the internet, when the internet was rolled out, so Australia actually around the 2000 the millennium, Australia was one of the leading nations in terms of rolling out the internet. So that's just one example. So Australia is fairly quickly in terms of jumping on the back end of something new. But on the other hand, there's also a pragmatic approach to it, and then say, okay, so it's not just, we're doing something for the purpose of doing it. So we want to actually see the benefits from that. So in terms of cloud in Australia, so there's a rapid increasement in terms of rolling out cloud across small and medium businesses in particular. And that has just accelerated. And I think it's like the technology trends very often are driven globally. So, and that's a global trend. Unfortunately, COVID is a global trend as well. So, and similar to other parts of the world, that speed of the acceleration of the cloud adoption was then in Australia also driven by COVID. So we see that really rapidly increasing. So if you look at the Australian market and the small and medium businesses here, so a lot of the influence comes from the proximity to other Asian countries like Singapore, China, Malaysia. But then on the other side, well, it's a big island here, so we're connecting then to all of our neighbors. So neighbors to the east, America, neighbors to the west. Then we're looking to Europe. So and Australia, as such, is basically a melting pot. A melting pot of people, but also a melting pot of the different mindsets and the different technology trends that come together. So if you look at this then from at the cloud adoption and how the government helps here, so it's also something that was picked up in particular recently by the government in terms of driving cloud development and digitization forward. So there's large programs in place that actually support businesses, and in particular small and medium businesses, which are the core drivers of the economy in Australia, because we don't have those large multinational manufacturers as Germany has, for instance, or USA has. So that was recognized by the government here, and there's quite a few programs in place that actually support and fund those initiatives here in the Australian market. So I think just in summary, so I think the mindset is somewhere in between Germany and US. People are very open, but they also approach things pragmatic.
All right, thank you. Last but not least, I would like to ask Christine. In its recent Digital Riser report of 2020, the European Centre of Digital Competitiveness has classified France as a digital riser. France has thus passed Germany in terms of digitization. What is the digital maturity level of French SMB? What are digitization and cloud drivers?
Well, France cannot always be the laggard, and we have a big chance here that our economy is not thriving as much as Germany's economy. So we have to maybe innovate to be able to sustain the economy. There are several reasons actually for this very, very obvious shift into new technologies. I've been around the cloud for about 10 years. And 10 years ago, when you would ask a company, do you want to change your system? And you would offer to switch to the cloud. Some of them would say, no way, never, ever. And some of them would be a little bit curious about it. Today, it's not a question anymore. I mean, there are very few companies that would say, I don't want to go cloud. There are few companies who say, I want to go cloud. This is not the majority, but I would say in the first place, they will pick a system. They will not really question whether it's cloud or not. So in a way, that's a very important first step. We have conducted by Cegid a survey last year with IDC, and it turned out that more than 50% of the SMBs in France have started this digital journey. If you compare it to larger companies, it's a pretty good number. I mean, larger companies declare they are 70% that started their digital transformation. And it really proves and demonstrates that smaller business have embraced this idea of transforming their business and going digital. There are very different reasons for that matter. And one, surprisingly, is that the government itself has been, and especially the tax agencies, have been really strong in promoting digitization. The French individuals and companies have been actually compelled to report their taxes in a dematerialized way for years. So it's become something rather normal. And the state is always looking for efficiency and collecting taxes. We're rapidly switching to also the e-invoicing. That's going to be the only accepted standard in 2023. And when we're talking about digital invoicing, e-invoicing, we can expect that the next step would be EDI, and that by the same time you invoice your customer, the information on VAT will be directly sent to the government. So in terms of efficiency, there's a big gain for the state for sure. And actually, there's also a benefit for companies because this is less paperwork, as was mentioned by Frank. So this is one of the main reasons why people anyway have to switch to digital. The second thing is that the cost of labor is quite expensive in France, and especially in the service area, that's probably the easiest space to digitize. If you come to France, you'd be surprised maybe or not, I don't know, but to see how many supermarkets have automated actually the payment process. So that payment terminals today are most of the time operated by customers themselves, you know, in a self-service way. Well, that's great. If you're a business and you want to grow, you know, you're going to question whether you're going to hire because it's quite expensive. And in the first place, you will look for efficiency and process optimization before thinking of hiring. So this is also a big driver. And the good news is that whenever you digitize, there's a direct link between the health of the companies and the fact that they digitize. So it really brings values to companies. Joy mentioned the new generation of entrepreneurs, and we basically have this switch today where the people coming to the head of companies, they're no more baby boomers. Actually, baby boomers are retiring. They're younger people, and these younger people, they might not be born with a smartphone, but they learned how to use it. And today, computing is definitely smartphone, and they don't see things differently. This has a huge impact because they don't really understand why things are so heavy to deploy, to install, to use, to interconnect. You know, if I tell you, get a smartphone and it's going to take 5 days to load your web app or whatever, no way, you know, so it's not accepted anymore. And the cloud is offering the opportunity to have the same kind of environment where you get the apps you need in a shorter time than when it's on-premise. So this is really a very strong motivation for people to switching to the cloud. And eventually, the offer is definitely driving this trend. You know, it's a little bit like electric cars. If all the car vendors say we want to sell electric now, you will have no more choice. And the truth is, for vendors like us, software vendor, we know it brings a lot of value to the customers in terms of maintenance, being up to date, and so on. So we tend, us vendor, to offer more and more solutions on the cloud. And on the other hand, education is rising also, and the customers tend to see the benefits more and more. And having all kind of solutions without spending fortunes is definitely a driver for them, as much as security issues.
All right, thank you, Christine. Yes, the global comparison shows the level of digitization and cloud adoption varies across SMB markets. At the same time, however, there are similar motivations driving SMBs into the cloud. In Germany, some clear hurdles can be identified that no longer exist in the USA, Australia, and even France. Conservative investment behavior, ownership mentality, fear of data loss, etc. pp. Thank you very much for your impressions and answers. And this brings us to the next point in our round table here. Data security and global comparison. Let's stay with a very distinctive topic that German SMBs are very concerned about and even unsettled by. In Europe, the protection of data and the establishment of consumers and companies' own data sovereignty have had high political relevance for years. Numerous compliance measures, such as the GDPR, reflect the high expectations of European users. In recent studies, 89% of companies surveyed in Germany named data sovereignty as an important or very important criterion when choosing their cloud provider. When asked what constitutes data sovereignty for them, DSGVO compliance and data center location, for example, 57% were cited by respondents as by far the most important aspects. Christine, what do you think? Is data sensitivity a European phenomenon? How important is data protection at French SMB? What would you say?
Well, I would say that generally speaking, companies are always very, very super jealous of their data. But at the opposite, I think they're very much taken for granted the fact that anytime they buy a system, it should protect their privacy and security, and they used to take it for granted. I think the first thing in Europe is probably the government that have been concerned with data privacy and security, and I think it's been spurred somehow by Patriot Act that has really spurred the governments to issue new regulations. France is not as demanding as Germany because the French companies, users, and in the States allows the servers to be hosted in Europe and not especially, not falsely in France. But undoubtedly, there's more conscious today. So the question we get from the customers is not whether we are hosted in France, but it's more whether we are in Europe. And there's no need to ask this question because anyway, we wouldn't do otherwise. So there's been slowly, and I think the COVID crisis has brought into light the fact that security is a real matter. And there have been a development of ransomware, cyber criminality, and especially maybe during this crisis, it's become more obvious because hospitals have been attacked. So people got more sensitive about it. And security now is becoming a cloud driver, really. And, the word public cloud, that might be a little bit scary, shouldn't be that scary because basically I think the wording for Europeans is a little bit, frightening because what is public is not private anymore. But the truth is that companies have started considering that actually giving the maintenance of their most critical data to professionals who know how to do it, who are hyper specialists, just like Microsoft, for instance. We're hosted on Azure by Sajid, is far more efficient, and that anyway they wouldn't be able to afford the know-how that is necessary to protect their data if they were doing it by themselves. So in the same survey that I spoke about, the SMBs consider, and that was a big surprise to us, but it's very good news, 40% of the SMBs consider that the cloud is actually a way to protect the integrity of their data better than operating themselves.
Thank you, Christine. Frank Feustel, you have emphasized the openness of Australian SMBs about cloud, new technologies, etc. How about is data protection for Australian SMBs?
Well, in Australia, so the data regulation tends to be more pragmatic and business friendly. So it kind of steers on a middle course between US and Europe. So whereas in Europe, it's almost often a philosophical discussion. And I mean, even if you look at Google Maps, for instance, and you see that In Germany, you can't see any house really. So every second house is grayed out. So in Australia, you wouldn't find that. You can do street view and just walk through the streets, just as one example. There's also more trust in Australia in the systems just in general. So data and systems. So people trust in this. So that's also something which becomes clear from the fact that Australia is leading actually in fintech. And is doing a lot of blockchain, the neobanks, the new banks, paperless banks, and paperless cash really. So honestly, I haven't touched cash in 2 years. So you don't see cash anymore here in Australia at all. So everything is a transaction and everything is data, and the people trust in that. So in terms of when it comes to SMBs and how they look at security, as I said, so it's a more pragmatic approach. So of course, they want to see their data protected. It's an important thing. And also ransomware, that's something which becomes more and more an issue here in Australia. So there was in the last year alone, there was a 60% of increase in ransomware. And there were quite a few stories that got big news up there in the papers across the world, but also in Australia. So it is a topic, it is important. But as Christine already pointed out, the mindset of the people shifts more towards what can I do to protect my data if I'm on-prem, and what can specialists do when I have my data in the cloud with AWS or with Azure or with any other of the big vendors that have all of the knowledge and the power behind it, and have all of the software updates and security updates and all of the audits and whatnot. That is actually something that companies realize in Australia, that data are actually more protected somewhere else. It's like money. So if your money is on the bank, it's more secure than if it's under your pillow, right? So, and that's kind of the mentality we have in Australia. And that's supportive, of course, then for cloud rollout and all of the security questions again. So it is important, but it's more a check mark really in terms of, okay, are you in a big with a big cloud provider? Do you have those security measures in place? Check. Okay, next. So it's becoming a commodity almost, and it is becoming an accepted standard. Australians still want to have their data in Australia, so I think that's kind of common across the world. People want to have their data somewhere close to them, and in particular more in the from a regulatory perspective, under control of the country they live in, so not with a foreign authority. So I think that's still valid here, but it doesn't really matter whether it's in your cellar or whether it's in somebody else's cellar, which is more protected, so which is actually preferable.
All right, as a global cloud computing provider, Microsoft Azure encounters many different data security and compliance requirements in different markets. How do you perceive the German SMB's attitude towards data protection? And do you see Europe's data protection sensitivity as a problem for innovation, Frank Menz?
Yeah, sometimes when I heard that, what Frank, the other Frank, was talking about, I want to change my market. And sometimes I wish that German users or customers a little bit more pragmatic. Sometimes also government regulations should be a little bit more pragmatic. But what we see is on the other side, even this high skepticism here, let's say this way, and this helps us at Germany at least, and of course other cloud provider and IT provider, to become better in data security. My colleagues in US, our colleagues in US, when we roll out something internally, they ask the German Betriebsrat, how can we roll out this? Because the barriers here, even in an IT company, well, law applies also at Microsoft Germany, and it helps us to improve our products. I think for that reason also, I guess Google have the Data Development and Protection Center in Germany. So these high standards which we have here in Germany helps us to become better, and this is important for us. When we look at the customer, it's still something like, yeah, they want to own their infrastructure, things they not own, they maybe cannot trust. It's not sometimes not very pragmatic. And they think that, for example, having a server in their own basement and paying 30,000 euros each 3 years for the infrastructure and do it everything by own helps them to be more secure. But the world have changed, not only for Corona, also before, that today security is totally different. And I think and many customers see this, Christine pointed this out also in France, many customers see that cloud could be a benefit for security, because when we look, everybody wants to have predictive business performance data. So please, technology, help me. How will be my business in the next few months, few years? But now they start seeing that also predictive security could only be delivered by the cloud, because you cannot do it with your own data to see where attacks starting over the globe, the data you didn't get. We as a global provider see this data, can build this in our products, in our services, even to protect our own infrastructure. And this helps us. So I guess it's the standard here, to summarize it, and the customer obsession about security. For us, it helps us to improve. And I guess at least in the European Union, the GDPR regulations helps us as an international provider to at least have one thing in Europe, and then we have to deal with other markets, of course, as well. But I guess Germany is there a good possibility to improve?
Yes, thank you, Frank. We have just heard data security and high standards of protection are equally important issues all over the world, yet the attitude varies. While in France, data security is even a cloud driver to French SMB, and in Australia, it is not more than a commodity check in the due diligence analysis. In Germany, there is a high sensitivity and skepticism prevails. And now we come to the third topic, new tech trends from a global perspective. While artificial intelligence, big data, and machine learning are still considered buzzwords in Germany's mid-market, SMBs in the USA and Australia have already been benefiting from the advantage of state-of-the-art technologies for years. Ajoy, Acumatica is at the forefront of new technologies and invests a lot into researching the impacts of voice control, artificial intelligence, drones, or HoloLens to solve problems of US SMBs. What tech trends are SMBs in the US already benefiting from today, and which trends will become increasingly important for SMBs from your perspective, Ajoy?
Yeah, great question. What an incredible time to be alive if you're dealing with technology, right? There's so much innovation happening. And when we look at the landscape at Acumatica and with our partners, many of them here in the panel, we don't shy away from technology. For us, the important value of technology is like, how do we use the tech to make us, very real difference in the business processes? Whether it's eliminating some mundane, repetitive tasks that nobody wants to do, or it's about improving a business process that's taking a lot of time or consuming resources that could be put to use for something else, right? And Ilka, you mentioned about the buzzwords. Of course, there are buzzwords, right? When we're talking about new trends and so on, but those buzzwords and the what they call fad, it'll come and go. But there are foundational innovation that's going to stay. And that's what we're trying to iron out as we apply some of this technology at Acumatica when we think about what makes sense for our customers. We think machine learning and artificial intelligence are here to stay. There's a lot of great work going on there. And I earlier joked about the new workforce wanting to take they take a picture of the check and it shows up in the bank, and they want to do the same thing with invoice. Well, that's not a wishful thinking anymore. We do that today, right? You're able to upload an invoice, and machine learning with the smart intelligence can analyze the document and automatically create an AP bill within the ERP system. We have done that with expense receipt, where rather than having to go through the claim process, and I understand the German expense process is very, very, very strict as opposed to what we do here in the US or in other markets, but the ability to capture the data that comes in the receipt and digitize them, those are some scenarios that are very powerful, saves a lot of time. And IoT sensors is the other area you mentioned, Internet of Things. We're starting to see customers in many industries adopting it, whether it's in the facilities in a building where the HVAC units automatically sending signals around this, health of the equipment, whether there's some specific warranty or repair work needed, that type of thing, or in agriculture, tracking the health of the plants and the soil moisture and the fertilizer level and so on. And then the last piece is automation. We're seeing robotic automation. I mean, it's no stranger to the German market, especially, with the legacy in the automotive industry. There is tons of automation happening with robotics in many different industries, that we're definitely tapping into. And I see this as a phenomenal area for us collectively as software industry and all of us as vendors. It's our responsibility to look at the technology and apply them to solve critical business problems and bring it to our customers.
All right, so let's jump to Australia. Frank, can you confirm these trends from an Australian perspective?
Well, it certainly can. So we're quite open here in Australia to pick up on new trends. So we like our buzzwords as well. So we like to play with them. But at the end of the day, so it is about applying it. It's about what is in it for me as a company. So what can it do for me, for my users? Where's the improvements, the benefits I get out of what is on offer? And I think although it's a buzzword, of course, AI, ML, so that's really big. That's big for us because it is really about being more efficient. It's about supporting the digitization. It's about connecting businesses. So at MIOB here, so we have we're not only doing the mid-sized business, so what we call SME here, but we're also doing small businesses really from a sole trader all the way up to 1,000. So that's about our range. So we are also about connecting those businesses between small and large, because all of those largest corporations, they have partially hundreds of suppliers and hundreds of customers. So in all of those connections, it's a big network. And when you think about how the communication goes through that network, there is still so many media breaks in there, and there's so much friction in there, so which we can drive out of the system through automation and through intelligence. So I think that's something which is really important here in the local market, the efficiency. But it's also something I would even drive that further and say what I'm looking for is actually to drive that efficiency even in the system from a user perspective. So customer experience, user experience, a system which is adaptable to the user that actually use it. And I can use the same system, but if I'm a novice user, so I have my guided, my little assistant that leads me through the system, but after like a couple of weeks, I don't need that anymore, so it shuts up. But it turns on, it learns from me, and it adapts the user interface to what I'm doing, and it learns with me, and I learn from it. So the system adjusts to what I need to do. And so that's something I see as a future trend, that we have even a more user-focused system that is actually really helping rather than being in the way. So, and the other thing, and I think Joy already mentioned that as well, is the consumerization really of the software. So with all of the younger generations and their small attention spans, so everything has to be fast and has to be easy and has to be quick and has to be shiny and flash, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that really drives us to reduce complexity and reduces to a level where it is actually easy to understand, where you have a lot less training for new people in new systems, and where it is much easier to understand complex processes because you're supported and it's made easy for you. And the final word on that is what I also see, because my background is actually even large. It's multinational, large manufacturing businesses. So that's where I spent most of my career. So which is here 80 side, say companies like Coca-Cola or others. So that complexity and that scope of a solution, which you 5 years, 10 years ago, you could only find in those large companies, is actually simplified and brought down now into the mid-market. And you have access to that intelligence and that complexity through an easier way of dealing with it through the user interfaces, automation, other things. You basically have a much broader complexity you have as a tool in Access. So I think those are things I'm really interested in moving forward, and I'm looking forward to see those trends happening. As Ajoy said, it's a really interesting time to be in currently.
All right, thank you so much, Robert. We have seen some trends from these front runners. Does Germany lag behind? Which technologies are widespread and on the rise among Germany's SMEs? And what do you see as tomorrow's trends?
It's a good question. So I think from an SMB perspective, I think there is a lag, because looking at digital maturity as a whole, as Ajoy had mentioned, it's very much a journey, and there are some building blocks and things that need to be in place for you to be able to achieve that. If you look at some of the bigger corporations, as Frank said, I mean, think about some of the automotive manufacturers here in Germany. You don't see a single human being. It's some of the coolest things. It looks like the future has come to today, right? But I think from an SMB perspective, they see these pictures and they hear some of the buzzwords about IoT, and Internet 4.0 has been talked about for about 10 years here in Germany. And as an SMB perspective, if you don't see that as a journey, it makes it a little bit daunting. And you start to think about, well, how do I do step 3 before I do step 1? And by not seeing it as this journey, this buzzwordiness kind of slows them down. A good example of that, I had a conversation with a business leader here in Germany, and he said, well, actually, I don't think I go into this cloud direction because the next technological revolution will come pretty soon, and I'll just jump on that one. And not seeing it as step by step reduces the willingness to not only want to adapt new technologies, but to be able to adapt new technologies. And that said, you start to see, as with the digital maturity, you start to see this adoption. And you see it more from the ability to kind of differentiate or start to see how we might use these things and look at this. And we have one customer, a good example, primarily working from paper. So everything was working from paper. Everything in their warehouse was paper. They took step 1 of this journey, and they implemented a cloud ERP product. And from there, everything was started to be unified. They could start to make decisions. From there, they looked at, for example, a scanning system in a warehouse management system in their warehouse to not only improve efficiency, but also to think about, hey, how can we improve our order to promise and be able to really be able to deliver on what we want to talk about. And from there, this person who 2-3 years ago was saying, I don't know about this technology thing, is now looking for opportunities and going into things like integrations to e-commerce platforms and looking for the business technologies. As Ajoy had mentioned, some of the things like OCR are really as a work reducer, and taking the processing of a bill from, let's say, 15 euros to 2 euros is a huge opportunity. But something unique to the German market is very much the ability to get rid of some of the paper and the physical paper around the office. So every German company you visit has walls of filing cabinets, because you have to keep a lot of your documents for 10 years. And if you don't trust your systems to keep them safe, well, then you're going to keep the physical copies as well. But thinking about a physical reduction and a real digital transformation in this regard, DMS systems or business application systems or ERPs that are more trustworthy and you have these data backups really start to show some of these things. Looking forward, I think there's a number of different ways that it could go. One thing that I get really excited about and start to see is this business model curation idea. So what I had talked about with our existing customer is, how do I go from very much a paper, very much a telephone organization to increasing touch points to my customers? Maybe I can give them a website that's direct to me, and they can place orders, or they can find out about their order status without doing some of these things. Or giving more flexibility across channels, whether it's a point of sale, an omni-channel, and things like this. Looking at Germany specifically with their excellence, I mean, their excellence in manufacturing, more going in the direction of trustworthy data points. So whether it's RFID, whether it's blockchain, whether it's some of these different things to really reduce loss, or whether it's even human beings and robots putting in information to measure against the industry, how well am I doing? And really being able to make smart decisions in this direction. I think that this gives these practical business applications. I think that it's a great pragmatic way here in Germany to look at what business or what value does this give me, not necessarily technology for technology's sake. And as Joy and Frank mentioned, AI and ML is of course exciting, and you're starting to see the first pragmatic things, but going from this paper world to the digital world and then looking for new opportunities. There is this lag, but it's starting to catch up very much as they start to adopt these technologies.
All right, thank you. So Christine, what are tech trends in France?
So tech trends are a little bit different based on the size of the companies. We have undoubtedly a move towards ML AI. People don't name it this way. They just see actually the concrete use cases. They don't want to know what's behind that. For very large companies, there are super interesting things that have been developed in terms of semantic analysis, for instance. There are large corporations that gets hundreds of thousands of emails every year to their customer care. And instead of having one person studying each email and saying, oh, this one, they want to renew a license, I will send it to a sales guy, or this one is not happy, I will send it to the claim department. They have a system that would do this analysis and send it directly to the right person to be more efficient and have a better customer experience. So for larger companies, this means something. For smaller companies, the SMB sector, OCR and gains in productivity, just like I mentioned, is very popular and has been very popular for the past, I would say, 5 years, coming to maturity. But I think it's going to be very soon overruled by direct EDI, direct integration, and not even a physical invoice having to be scanned. And that's going to come very, very fast. Self-service, super popular, really meets the French individualistic behaviors. We love to do things by ourselves. It's something that is rewarding to us as users, and it's something that's very beneficial to companies because your customers are doing your job. This is what we've seen with the banking area. That's really interesting. They probably were the first to do that. They started to close physical bank outlets, and they had you go on the internet to do things, and actually they made you pay for that, and people were ready to pay to do the job of the bank. So this is something that's going to keep on thriving. And the last thing that's currently becoming big also, it's that it's not just about selling a software, it's really about selling services and embedding services. And this is something that, for instance, CG has been starting to do. And to give you an example, for very small businesses, we have integrated a service where by exactly the same time that you would invoice a customer, you just have to press a button where you say, I want this invoice to be funded by a bank. And there's an algorithm behind that will assess the capability of the customer to actually pay this bill. And this is to actually, of course, monitor the risk that they're taking funding you. But I mean, in a matter of seconds, you can get the money on your account and not wait for the customer to pay for you. And that was done exactly at the same time you invoice the customer. So these are the kind of services that companies are going to look for more and more. And we are, as vendors, maybe we're going to be turning a little bit more into fintech than into pure software vendors. For the future, the big trends that we see is, and once more, it's really directly deriving from the smartphone culture, is customization. And when we're talking about customization, we're not talking about heavy code, vertical. We're talking about each department wanted to work on the system if it meets their need. And it will meet their need if they have the ability to change things rapidly and adjust it to their need. And these cannot be made with heavy code. So the no code is going to be tomorrow's future for the software for the platforms, for sure. Collaboration, already big, is going to keep on being big. And I think that Acumatica is working, to enhance collaboration. And you have super sexy things coming up in the months to come. Logistics, we talked about robotics, we talked about RFID for sure. And last but not least, big data. That has been a huge topic. Everybody was talking about it. And as we say in France, nobody was knowing what it was about, but it's becoming a reality because SMBs can access now this ERP central system where all the data are kept. And this is going to be so important with the development of IoT, and this is going to allow us to benefit from predictive analysis in a situation where it's not just there is data and I'm going to analyze the data, but in the sense that there are tons of data, there's algorithm, and the system is going to give me advice, which was not the case before. And this is going to grow. We believe it's going to grow pretty big, that the system becomes another partner to the user as compared to what it was before.
All right, thank you, Christine. So Ajoy, I think you raised your hand, right? Do you like to add anything, Ajoy?
Just real briefly, I know we're running a little over here, but Christine made a comment about this low code, no code, which we see this as an important area. And one of the investments we put in Acumatica and working with our partners here is the ability to provide some of those capability in terms of how do you customize Acumatica so you can do that without having to write the line of code. So one of the things we actually demoed it last week at one of our user conferences, ability, working with Microsoft on one of their newer platform called PowerFX. It's a new low-code language, kind of inspired by Microsoft Excel, using Excel-like formulas to get into some calculations within an ERP system like Acumatica. So there's lots of new stuff happening there that's going to make it even more easier, for organizations and users to customize and take the data that they need without having to rely on a development team.
All right, thank you so much. So let me summarize this topic. The global comparison shows new technologies are spreading globally. And if we look at the pioneering markets of the USA, Australia, and France, we see that trends such as cloud computing, artificial intelligence, big data, and automation are on the rise. These trends can also be heralded as important future developments for Europe's SMBs. Let's jump into the last topic for today, cloud platforms as an entry into the technological future. What all the participants here have in common is that they come from ERP or cloud companies that offer their SMB customers cloud-based platform solutions. We would like to conclude by asking why the future of enterprise IT lies in the cloud and what advantages cloud platforms offer SMBs in particular. Ajoy, Acumatica is driving competition with platform technology. The distinction between true cloud and fake cloud is particularly relevant in the US. Can you elaborate on that? And what do you see as the biggest benefits of cloud platforms for SMB? Ajoy.
Yeah, no, great question. And I think we covered a lot of the key points over the course of last hour or so in our discussion. To me, I think when you talk about the true cloud system, it's about the value of the platform and what the platform brings to the table. We talk about this all openness, right? The open API that we have, which is foundational to Acumatica and the systems that we have with our partners, that enables our customers to be able to use not just Acumatica as an ERP system in a very closed form, but the ability to take advantage of other best-in-breed services that they depend on, whether it's for document management or e-signing, or like last week you announced an integration with Microsoft Teams, for instance, where you could initiate a chat or a video call from within Acumatica with context. So when you're pinging somebody, that you have a question on a sales order or a purchase order or a case or whatnot. And then the other piece we talked about is the integration with Adobe PDF, where from within Acumatica, you can do annotations. You can mark up a PDF document. You can add a comment. You can ask for corrections, without having to go through the process in two silos, bringing those experiences together. To me, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. We can talk about all this technology innovation, all these buzzwords. At the end of the day, is it making our users' life better, and it's solving real business problems for our customers while saving money and making them more profitable, right? I think if we have a platform, whether it's true cloud system with the open API that can offer that, we believe that's the area to invest even further. And a lot of the technology innovation stuff that we've been talking about all morning today, or afternoon, I should say, are critical, to bringing that value forward to the customers.
Yeah, thank you, Ajoy. Frank, Microsoft not only offers storage capacity and infrastructure in the cloud, but also sees the cloud as the gateway for new technologies, I think. Microsoft has recently introduced numerous cloud initiatives and offers its users AI services, which companies can use to innovate their business models. Will this be accepted by German SMBs? What would you say?
Well, I hope, yes, they're already doing it. And let me start with a sample. A few years ago, I guess something like 3 years ago, a manufacturer for parking barriers, so park management, yeah, and they come to us and saying, hey, we need a solution, yeah, because we don't find servers, we don't find human resources. We tried by our own, and the use case was just simple, having a park barrier which recognizes a car. If it's a small car or a huge car pays more than a small car. Maybe the user says the barrier recognized me. Of course, you have to look for privacy and things like that. And they start doing it by their own. After 3 months, they quit. And they said, okay, how can we help us? We set up a workshop, and in 2 days, we have a working dummy, not using cloud storage services. We use cloud cognitive services, AI services as a user, because the cloud already knows how to recognize a car, how to recognize a letter, how to store it secure. The blueprints are there. And in 2 days, they have something working, which they tried before for 3 months. So rapid development. And what Christine already mentioned, also Ajoy, is today they sent us developer in this workshop. Today they could have the business owner or the product owner and doing it in low code or no code scenario. So, and that will be a tremendous impact in what Christine say, the department wants the improvement rapidly. They don't want to search a vendor internal or externally. They want to have the tools to solve the business case, and they can do it by their own. And that maybe, I guess, we see it also will help as German SAPs, because they are used to do it by their own. But on another level, they use services to build something on their own. And I think that's helped us. And especially there important is the terms of new partnership, not doing it everything on, searching partnerships with technology vendors like Microsoft, AWS, or whatever. They are open to talk. Also with university and other company startups. And I think there is a huge potential to increase these rapid development cycles, which we need. And I'm looking forward that this will help us to, in Germany, especially in Germany, that the huge segment of SMBs, and we don't have huge developer resources. I think they're there, that we can solve business problems together.
All right, thank you, Frank. Christine, Cegid also offers a cloud ERP platform called Flex. From your point of view, what is the biggest advantage of platforms for SMB?
I think this is the sense of history. We've talked about centralizing information. We've talked about big data, but at the end of the day, actually, what's going to happen is that the ERP is going to disappear. And this is probably what I love with the concept of XRP, the X standing, at least to me, standing for whatever I need. You know, this is the variable. We are going to enter a world where the user won't even log into the ERP. Companies do not run systems. It's not their core activities. Okay, they operate processes, and your process might be in the ERP or outside the ERP. The user doesn't want to know about it. It doesn't care, you know. And this is exactly the opportunity that a platform on the cloud is allowing. It's embedding services. It's connecting the inside and outer world with other solutions that do complete their what they need to operate their processes. So that's the beauty of it. The fact that the ERP and the platform is to become the central nervous system of the business. But it has to be seen as a hub, you know, not as something that has to exist by itself. It's a hub. And this is where the platform is going to be really crucial to companies, breaking walls and allowing the data to spread in an intelligent manner, people to connect to each other inside the company, outside the company, okay, open world. And also another benefit is that doing so, we offer the ability to our customers to benefit really of an economy of partnership where they can actually access services that they wouldn't be afford to access if they were not on this kind of platform that's providing services that have been already plugged, that where, you know, just simple things like costs have been negotiated by Cegid, for instance, and they can benefit from a service that normally only large companies can benefit from. So it's really about getting people together. I think it's the Uber way of doing the software in the sense that we're definitely connecting people, and that's a great benefit for our customers.
Great, Christine. If we wrap up, we see that cloud ERP platforms are crucial foundation for future innovation and technologies. They are open to integrate new services and allow for innovation from outside, which SMB would never be able to bring to the customers themselves because they don't have the people, the skills, the competencies, the financial resources, etc. But if SMB choose a cloud platform partner, they can become bigger than they are. All right, we have learned a lot today about the opportunities that new technologies hold for SMBs and the great importance of cloud-based enterprise software all around the world. At the end of this fruitful conversation, I want to give all of you some room to share your thoughts about the future of the SMB world. What are your professional recommendations for SMBs who want to thrive in modern economy? Where do you see important shifts that need to happen? Maybe you can make a short statement, 1 minute, and we start with Christine.
I have a short one. 10 years ago, I would have said, go bold, go cloud. But today, I'm thinking, be reasonable, go cloud before your competitors do. Definitely.
Oh, that's just 10 seconds, I think. Wonderful. So let's move on with Frank Feustel.
Yeah, let's see whether I can go as short as well. So I think in many countries, SMBs are really key for the drive of the economic power and growth. It's a really, it's a powerhouse, the SMB bunch of companies. So I think what we're really talking about is a digital transformation, and cloud as a first step actually of that transformation. So for me, really, it comes down cloud is an enabler for agility and digital resilience. Which is even open up business opportunities that haven't been even available before to the businesses. So just, I think as the last statements in terms from a practical perspective, what does it mean really to companies and what would be my advice? So my advice would be get informed, be pragmatic, look at cloud and digital transformation from all different angles that are relevant for your situation, and take an outside-in view. Secondly, what's best for your company? So what is really, where do you benefit from? What are the pros and cons? What does the competition do and how do I differentiate? And lastly, just get started. And it's about the journey, as Joy and others said before. Cloud is just the beginning, but the transformation process is actually an agile and continuous improvement throughout of the process.
All right, thank you, Frank. Robert.
Yes, I think exactly as Frank said, I think from my perspective, it would be, we've talked a lot about how maybe Germany lags behind, but there's a reason that the German economy is where it is and the capabilities that the companies have. And I do believe, as Frank said as well, SMBs, especially in Germany, are the lifeblood of the economy and really make the economy what it is. So to these SMBs, I would say to thrive in this new digital transformation world, and this is simply just to start the journey, right? So the global technology barriers and the global, let's say, the border barriers are starting to break down. Technology is becoming more democratic. And there are very talented, trusted advisors out there. So there are organizations that really specialize in helping these companies to do that. So my advice would be go and start this journey, find a trusted advisor that you believe in, because this first step is the hardest. And as I illustrated earlier with one of the customers, it's a step-by-step process. But by taking this first step, the mindset shift that happens is one of the most incredible ones and one of the most important ones. And by opening that first door, the mindset goes from, hey, this technology thing is scary. Hey, this technology thing seems like 2, 3, 4 years off, to thinking more along the lines of, we don't necessarily know what's coming around this next corner, as 2020 has shown us all. But we're ready to adapt and we're ready technologically to be able to solve whatever problems come along.
All right, and Atoy.
Yes, super. No, this is a great way to end this conversation here. I would say still go bold, right? If anything, the scary part is actually not that you want to go to cloud. The scary part is that you're thinking about it still, right? So in all seriousness, though, what the last 18 months taught us all, right? We've seen organizations, we've seen in our day-to-day life, restaurants and retailers have gone through this transformation. I remember somebody saying the quote, 12 years of digital transformation happened in 12 months, right? We can do it as a country, as an ecosystem, right? We're able to make decisions in being scrappy, be nimble and agile, and get to the right point without having to analyze and to the no one's end, if you will. So I think, if there's one thing that I would say is let's not lose that trait. We've learned a new skill of able to make a decision quick because we are put under the pressure. Let's take that as an example and use that same lens and measure and formula going forward. Because technology, I'm telling you, when you look at it from far away, it might look scary, but let's put it to our advantage and use it for the right reasons. I think the SMBs are doing the right thing. We're starting to see the needle move, and we as software publishers in this panel, I am personally, I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody, very excited about what's happening in terms of adoption, and I think there's more to come here.
Thank you so much, Ajoy. Last but not least, Frank Mintz.
Well, be pragmatic, and I think everything said. But important is, especially maybe for smaller SMBs, which don't have their own IT department and rely to a partner with their core infrastructure and development of product. And if your partner hadn't talked to you in the last 10 years about the cloud and the opportunities of the cloud, and not only about what's not going and data privacy, about the opportunities in the cloud and how to solve those problems, because solutions are there, then go out and change or search another partner, because that's something what frustrates me if I see a partner selling the old server infrastructure and training developers to writing their own code, etc. In the meantime, they could be far more efficient with cloud service. So go out, search for another partner. Even you have a Microsoft partner, search for a modern cloud Microsoft partner or whatever, because the opportunity relies in the cloud and the partner is so important. And if you have talked, then talk to the next one, because it's really important to have the right partner.
All right, thank you so much for the statements. Thank you so much for your thoughts and valuable insights. I think you took us with you on a journey into your home countries, and we have gained a lot of new information on the differences and similarities of the SMB markets. Now we want to open the discussion and give you, our dear guests, the chance to ask questions and share your thoughts and statements. You can either address our experts directly or pose your questions to all speakers in general. Please type your questions in the chat, and our behind the scenes manager will make sure they reach me on my mobile phone. You can start now. Please ask your questions, and I will start with an icebreaker question. What are your biggest takeaways from today's discussion? Who likes to start? Maybe Australia. Frank from Australia, you like to start?
Well, my biggest takeaway is really that there's a lot of optimism and there is a lot of opportunity out there. And we kind of all share, no matter which part of the world we are, we know that there is something going on, and it is important, and it's big, and it's a big transformation, and it opens so many opportunities for all of us. So that even if you're not ready to jump, at least get informed. And then, well, if you're in America, go big. If you're in Germany, start your first step. If you're in Australia, you're in the middle. You crawl, walk, run. I think we're walking and they're running in America.
Okay, let's take a look at Ajoy. I think you woke up in this morning at 3 a.m., I think. So what is your learning for the morning?
Something like that. I didn't even look at the clock. Why would I, right? No, I mean, again, I think I agree with Frank. There's obviously steps and the time for everything, and every country, when it comes to adoption with technology and other infrastructure, etc., have their own system and the pattern. Some countries are much further ahead than others, but it's not to say it's like the better late than never, right? If I may say so. And in some cases, like I remember one of the presenter talk about, I want to wait. I think Robert was talking about some conversation he had with, I want to wait for the next innovation to come. I don't think that is the attitude. The attitude is, hey, what's the problem that you have, and what's the best solution that you can afford to solve for? Because if you're waiting for the next opportunity, maybe your competition is looking at the opportunity that you're having right now, and that's the key thing to be concerned about, in my opinion.
All right, thank you, Ajoy. We received a very interesting question. Thank you so much. Greetings to Carsten. How to tackle best with the complexity of the ERP platform with all its opportunities when we bring it to SMB companies with their limited resources and capabilities? Who likes to answer? You can also read the question again, I think, in the chat.
I can jump in on that one. I think especially when we talk about the cloud ERP, it is a huge thing, right? There's a lot of different functionalities. There's a lot of opportunities there, and where do we get started? And I think as Frank and I mentioned in the sign off there, it's very much finding trusted advisors in this process to help you find that first thread to pull, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're looking for opportunities everywhere, then you're going to inherently fail because you don't have these resources. But especially when we talked about the no-code, low-code platforms as well, with a trusted advisor, looking at a specific process or a specific business opportunity or need, you can start to then, let's say, put your ducks in a row or find the more concrete opportunities along the way. So rather than trying to eat the whole cake at once, you take it slice by slice and you kind of look at it in a more step-by-step approach.
All right, anything to add from the others?
No, just like ERP sounds like a monster truck, but I think there are ERPs which grow with the company and grow with the implementation. So you don't have to implement the next monster truck. You can start with a small one.
Yeah, it's again, I think
there are many vendors out there.
Yeah, I think this is what Robert is talking about, right? I mean, if you look at it from far, it might feel like daunting, but that's where you take a very phased approach, right? Where do we want to start? Maybe I start with the financials, like getting that into a modern cloud-based system so I have access to my general ledger from everywhere. Then you go into these other areas, whether it's in inventory management, whether it's in manufacturing or whatnot. So I think taking a very balanced, phased approach, and again, with the support system, and again, the tools are also evolving, right? It's not the same ERP that folks are used to 5, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of these things are configuration, easy customizations that you can do without writing code. So platforms have caught up now. The users can take advantage of that as well.
Thank you. I received another question. Governments can play a large part in supporting new technologies. Last year, the German government approved a 5 billion euro funding package for improving Germany's expertise in artificial intelligence. How do you evaluate government programs, and do they meet SMBs' needs and realities? Who wants to answer this? Robert or Frank? Who can answer this question? I'm not sure who can answer this question. Maybe Frank Forstl.
Well, I guess it depends a bit on the country, really. So because different countries have different programs in place. So I talk from the Australian perspective, of course. So we do have certain programs in place, for instance, modernization of manufacturing. Which is a program where in Australia we we sold out our manufacturing expertise to China and Asia, and in particular now with COVID. So we heard like those 12 years in 12 months. So suddenly we recognized, so we need to be more self-sufficient. So programs come into place that then say, okay, let's turn this around. And how do we do this? And we do this through enabling those businesses, helping those businesses through their process in digitization. So there's fundings in place that or grants in place that can actually be picked up from the local small and medium-sized businesses in terms of getting on the track. There's support, there is partners, there's training programs around those initiatives. But that's just one example, for instance, on manufacturing here in Australia. But I think when it comes to government very often can be it can be a hindrance very often, government, but it also can be an enabler. And it depends really on where the money is put. And I think that's the important thing. So if you look at the government and what they do and try to support the business, so they don't spread it evenly, at least not in Australia. So there is winners and losers. So, and you have to wait that you're on the winner side, and then you can jump on the train and go with it.
Yeah, just to add to that, Frank, I totally agree, and I think it depends on no one knows better how to improve this digital transformation journey than the business owners themselves. And I think that the governments, we've seen a few cases with our customers, and I don't want to quote program names because I'll mess it up there, where they gave a little bit of freedom. There's a grant or something like this that says in the direction of digital transformation, you can use this in a more flexible way. And by doing this and by being a little bit more open about the solutions, it creates an opportunity for customers who otherwise wouldn't do these types of things, or business owners who otherwise wouldn't do these types of things, to maybe take a risk that isn't really a risk because it's covered by the government. And I think by being more flexible in the solution, the governments are more, they really enable rather than hinder, because if it's really too specifically focused on a problem statement, then potentially the business owners or the business leaders don't see that as a problem statement or aren't trying to solve that same problem.
If I may say a word just about infrastructure also, which is super important. And I think this is one of the key success factors in France, is that for the past years, the government has been very careful about making sure that the fiber, the 4G in the first place, can go everywhere. Because if you're speaking about cloud, of course, you need to have a network. And this plays a huge part into the ability to adopt this new technology. And the French government actually has been pretty good. Governments, because there have been several, it takes years, pretty good at helping the department and the geographies to improve their infrastructures.
All right. Anyone else? Does anyone add anything?
Just want to add, maybe I work for an AI provider, global AI provider from America, and I can understand that Germany wants to implement also these technology in the German economy, and not only using also AI built made in Germany. I think that's fair that they do it. I think money solves, but also you need those advisors who start working with the company. It's a similar situation like in schools, where there's a lot of money for digitalization of schools, but often the schools don't have the capability to start working on a digital concept, because it's not only buying PCs and implementing a platform. You have to think about data privacy, about maintenance, etc. And often the schools, even companies, cannot do it for their own. And you need to find the barriers how the money can be invested, not only in technology, maybe also in advisors which help to speed up, because then you have this acceleration what the government needs with the money. And
Yes, that's right. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your questions, and thank you so much for your answers, Christine, Frank, Robert, and Ajoy. Yeah, this was the first lexbizz Roundtable. Thank you for attending. We hope you liked the discussion and that you leave with valuable insights or inspirations. Hopefully many roundtables will follow. You can stay up to date by following lexbizz on the common social media channels or at www.lexbizz.de. There will be a news section available on the website for you to follow. We wish you a lovely afternoon and say thank you for joining us, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.